many people are like working with QuickBooks right now? Just a couple, right? Does everybody have a cost code system set up at their company? I'm sure the heavy highway guys do, right? And as we all know, the most difficult part of any cost code system is getting that information reliably from the field, right? If you've got 10 cost codes, if you've got 200 cost codes. Sometimes it doesn't matter if you don't have any cost codes. You're lucky enough to get the job number from these guys, right? It's not unique to your business. It's not unique to this area. It is everywhere across the United States that getting effective information from the field is what job costing is all about. The estimating portion of job costing is the easy part, right? You guys have probably estimating software. You might have an Excel spreadsheet that you use for the estimating. HCSS has got an excellent estimating program, right, that actually flops over into their job costing or field tracking, right?
Heavy bid and heavy job.
Heavy bid being the estimating, right? I wish, and I'm sure they wish, that it would work for other industries, you know, like it would be usable by electrical contractors or plumbers, you know, because I will not hesitate to recommend that software. It's really, really great software. So again, when we talk about the job costing, I think in the blurb that was written on here, I think there were 5 components of job costing that we talked about that are essential. Really, if you look at the first page with the actual first report, you look at the first bullet point there, the components of job costing, where it says the original contract amount, original estimated cost, change orders to contract amount, change order to estimated cost, actual amount billed against contract, actual cost incurred, and then committed and remaining committed cost. Okay, these are what I consider the 7 components of job costing. Every job costing report you do has at least one of these items in it, and every job costing report that's created is created off of these and calculations off of these items. Anybody see anything that's missing there? Other than information that's missing from your guys in the field or your project managers? Right? When we look at this report on the top of the screen, and I'll just show you the report here. Can everybody see that all right? So we're going to be taking a look at these sample reports here with just these 3 jobs that have various information in it. Again, the easy part of any job costing report or the estimate, everybody knows what you're going to bill on a contract, right? Everybody signs the dotted line and says, we're going to bill X amount of dollars for this. Hopefully, you have also determined what it's going to cost you to perform this work, right? So the estimated costs are in there. There's an estimated gross profit and an estimated gross profit percentage. So very high level report, really doesn't tell you anything, just to set up to say this is where all job costs start. All right, again, what level of detail we go into, we're going to cover that in a little bit in this session. The biggest problem I see in the field, and again, not unique to this area, not unique to your company, is tracking costs and profitability of change orders. Right? If I ask for a show of hands, how many people run into this, right? It's, don't be shy. Everybody does, except those guys who use HCSS. Still the same thing, right? Project managers around the globe will let you know that, oh, I got this $13,000 change order, right? And then you ask them, well, how much is it going to cost us? Well, we're going to bill $13,000. How much are you going to, you know, what's the cost on it? I don't have time for that, right? We're in the project, we're running, the change order's out there. The biggest problem with this is the fact that on an over-under billing report, on a percentage of completion report, if you don't have those estimated costs on the change orders and you're increasing your contract amount, your percentage of completion gets accelerated because your revised estimated cost hasn't changed, okay? And typically it's the accounting department that's asking for this information, right? The owner doesn't care because he sees that contract amount going up. When it comes time for the either monthly or quarterly over-under billing reports to be produced, it's either a 15-minute process or it's a 15-day process, right? Because now you've got to come back to the project managers and ask them, well, what are the estimated costs here? on these 17 change orders that we got in the last month. So timeliness of the information, as you probably know, is very, very important. To get that information right now, get the information from the guys, from the field, and you treat a change order like a contract. If it's a $400,000 job and it's a $13,000 change order, that change order and its profitability is as important as the $400,000 job. That change order or change orders can mean profit or loss on that particular project, as we'll see in some of these reports. And feel free, guys, I'm not on rails here, so if you want to chime in, tell me I'm wrong. At any time, please feel free to join in. All right, so again, a lot of this is going to be rudimentary to a lot of you people, but let's go ahead and turn the page here. And we touched on that a little bit here with the change orders. So if you look at this CEA 02 report, again, my original contract and my estimated gross profit here, when we go in and look at the second report, that now has change orders in here, that not only has change order the contract amount and change order to the estimated cost, okay? So again, you look at the change order as a separate contract, but it's a component of the original contract. If we're not putting these in, we're not revising our estimated gross profit, right? You'll see that in the second job that my profitability, where it was and where it is now, is much different, all right? This is because I've got a change order in there that has no contract amount. It's a change order to say, hey, my costs are going to increase by $22,000. What can cause this for the guys that are out there that are working on it? Materials expense, right? That you went out and thought you bought out a job, didn't get started on the project, price of copper tripled, quadrupled, right? That's the other issue that we're going to talk about later too, is purchase orders and making agreements for purchase prices so that you don't run into these surprises. This is a bad sign. This is a bad sign here that I've got to adjust my contract or my estimated cost by $20,000, and I'm not going to recognize any revenue on it. Okay, sometimes has to happen. Again, this type of change order would probably be entered in the system to adjust your percentage of completion to make sure that you're not accelerated. Those kind of change orders can also mean a loss on the project, unfortunately. When we look at the item here, where I see the change order to contract at $258,000, and I see my change orders for my estimated costs at $177,000, that might be one change order, it might be 10 change orders. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that I do have a contract amount and I do have an estimated cost for that particular change order or change orders. Simple report again here, guys. The equations aren't here, but if you look at the numbers, I've got my original contract, and if I add in my contract change orders, my new revised contract, or what I'm expecting to bill, is going to be at $350,000, right? My original estimated costs were $163,000. I've got $60,000 in additional costs, so my revised estimated costs, $223,000. Building on that first report that we looked at, that was simply the original contract and the original estimated cost. Estimated gross profit is simply the revised contract amount, this amount here, minus my revised estimated costs. This is what I'm looking to make on that job. Estimated gross profit, the equation's back on the first screen, which is the estimated gross profit divided by the contract amount. Give you your profit percentage. Let's continue on here, guys, to the third report. And this is kind of exactly what you're saying. So the top of the page, again, is back to the 01 report. And here's the example that we see the jobs with the original contract amount, the original estimated costs, and the gross profit. We're on item number 4 here. So the components of the estimated cost, and this is what you were talking about, right? The components of the estimated cost, guys, in general, I will say that everybody can look at this and say estimated costs are broken down by your labor and associated payroll burden, okay? The payroll burden being the payroll taxes of FICA, FUTA, SUTA, workers' comp. potentially a 401k match if you've got it. General liability insurance, workers' comp insurance, union and or prevailing wage fringes that are paid, right? And these are the items that Mary Beth was saying that this is what's forgotten, right? Because people go, oh yeah, we're $13 an hour. Yeah, you're on a job that is charging. I think the union contractors have a way better hold on it because you know what you paid that guy for that particular fringe, right? You know what that operator costs. You know what everything costs. A really beneficial report at the end of any project is to go back and look at what your average labor cost was for the projects over the last 6 months. We need to see where that thing is. So if we're estimating these projects at $27 an hour and we can't perform these things, for less than $32 an hour, we're lost already, right? You're talking about the labor. Labor is the X factor. That estimated labor dollars that you're looking at has really got to be a solid number. Materials, you make a call, you find out what that concrete costs, right? You make an agreement that in the next 6 months, if I buy X amount of concrete, it's going to cost me this. You buy out the job, you write a purchase order, there's a contract, that's a fixed cost. You shouldn't lose any money on that. Shouldn't. Depending on the estimate, shouldn't. Depending on the estimated quantity is there or not, right? If you go in and you say, oh, there's 5,000 cubic yards needed and it ends up being 12,000, you either hope to write a change order or you take it on the chin, right? If we come down and look at this, the subcontractors costs, which you were talking about, the fixed costs, right? The rented equipment, job-specific licenses, fees, permits, and bonds. So these are all the kind of general things that you can identify on a job that most people will know that these are the items that we need to go into the estimate with, okay? Mary Beth pointed out a couple of these that some of the newer contractors miss, right? You don't think about this. Oh, it's not a job-specific expense, so we don't have to worry about it with the estimate. That's where it gets into the indirect and overhead expenses, okay? This layout right here on the screen, even though this is job cost related, it looks very much like an income statement on your general ledger, okay? The top line would be your income, which I don't show here, but then we go into a breakdown of direct job costs, maybe a subsection for indirect job costs, and overhead expenses. Bottom line of this would be our net profit, right? What I see and what I've been doing for the last 3 years, again, as those margins have been shrinking, it didn't matter if your jobs didn't have all the indirect costs in it. If they were making 30% and down at the bottom of the line we had 22%, who cares, right? Now that we have margins of 5% on our bids, we got to make sure that that 5% is not only covering the cost of the job, but all these items that are down here in the indirect and overhead expenses. Really, really, really important. You look back on a lot of these companies, and again, there was a company here in Cleveland that I went to, and honestly, the owner sat down and said, he had the financial reports and he had job cost reports, and he goes, every single one of my jobs is profitable. Why am I losing money? Okay, and it was just that. Owned equipment, inventory, he had both, okay? He was not charging anything to his jobs for the owned equipment. He was not charging anything that was in the inventory because after all, it was shelves full of cash that anybody could have, right? Inventory tracking, equipment usage, two of the main points that I've been working on with a lot of contractors over the last couple of years. If you own the equipment, there is always an equipment expense. There's fuel, there's licenses, there's maintenance, right? Depreciation, all of these expenses that go into equipment. In the past, it was free, right? You can just use it. Just use the backhoe for the next 6 months. And by the way, you can use it on that job for 6 months, and you can only use it 2 days out of the year, but just keep the job there, or keep it there for 6 months. Hey, we need another backhoe. Oh yeah, let's just buy another one, right? Because that one's busy. So these expenses here, when you're looking at the estimating, again, Heavy Bid does a really good job at this of putting together a crew and putting together the equipment that's needed. And there's an associated equipment cost right on the Heavy Bid that says when you're using this particular piece of equipment, you're going to use this crew, and here's the cost for it. Then it comes a question of, does your accounting system or does your job costing system equate for the ability to cost those items to the job? Another big one that I see is missed a lot is the shop yard time. If you've got a fabrication shop, a lot of the ductwork contractors, the sheet metal contractors, they're pretty good at it because that's what they do. I mean, the installation is a small component of their business, but they do have shop time. The guys who are working in the shop actually code their time to the job, and that becomes a direct expense as opposed to an indirect expense. For the mechanics that are out there, the mechanics are working on the pieces of equipment for what? For a paycheck, obviously, but they are also keeping those pieces of equipment working so the jobs can work and so the jobs can make money. In that case, even though they are not directly attributable to a job, their cost or their expense should be somehow included in your estimated costs and should be part of what's going on. I think you'll agree with what you said is that X factor is the labor, right?
Well, shouldn't the X factor is the labor, but shouldn't the mechanic cost go along with the rest of the equipment?
Yes, as an indirect, right?
Indirect to the equipment.
Yep. So if you're estimating with the estimated equipment costs, that's taken care of. If you're not, if you've got yard expenses or shop, the warehouse guy, right? The warehouse guy sits there and he fills trucks all day. And why is he filling trucks? He's filling trucks for jobs. But do you think he's going to write on a time card, oh, I took 5 minutes for this job, and there's my 5-minute expense there? He's not going to do that, right? So any of these overhead expenses, you got to keep in mind that the labor, the more labor we have, everything else is a controlled cost. If I'm looking at my labor and that's what I need to sit there and watch and monitor, that overhead allocation, I will say typically is based on that labor dollars, because that's the question mark, right? The more labor a job has, the more of this overhead it should accept. If you think of it that there's a project that's got a $200,000 compressor that we're installing and it's going to take one guy, as opposed to another job that's got $180,000 worth of labor and no materials. Guess what's going to take more effort on your part, on the accounting part, on the project management side? That $180,000 worth of labor, that job, even though it's less cost, is the one that's going to take all the time. It's the one that should accept a lot of these overhead expenses, whereas the other one, you issue a purchase order and takes a couple guys with a couple wrenches, install, you're done. And that's just it, that X factor, right? That $180,000 job that you've got all labor in, that's the one that you got to keep your eyes on, because now you're performing to this. There's a little blurb on the article from Mike there, and he kind of goes over that as well, that the overhead as a portion of labor, again, is one of those that most accounting systems can handle pretty well. We do it automatically through payroll, so you can tag a job or you can tag the entire company and say there's 38% overhead on top of this. Now that's on top of your FICA, FUTA, SUTA, workers' comp, right? So when you look at your total job costing here, guys, with your labor, your payroll, your materials, subcontractor, rent equipment, the job that you were talking about with the X number of dollars in the materials and subcontracts, and the, whatever it was, the 10% in the labor, right? Yeah. That 10% can just literally trash the whole project. That 10% is that X factor that you got to keep on those hours. You look at the estimated hours versus the actual hours. You look at the estimated cost versus the actual cost. And that job is going to take part of this 38%, right? Because how long does it take to write a subcontract? You probably got a form that's all done, you know, a couple phone calls, it's project manager. Exactly. You know, it takes you less time to write that subcontract for $200,000 than it does to get the 40 guys to the job for one day. So the percentage that's defined or come up with, guys, is based on your company. There's nothing that you can say that X amount is what we want to allocate or X amount is what we want to attribute. You got to do a little research to find out what your company carries in overhead. Non-construction related, but Schwinn bicycles. You know, I used to work in an industry that we used to supply Schwinn bicycles, and everybody had a Schwinn growing up. Everybody wanted a Schwinn, right? That was the name. At one time, Schwinn bicycles had 600 people in their offices, and they had 200 people in production. Okay, a little bit overhead, right? It's also why they eventually moved to China and then eventually kind of disappeared. So tracking the overhead expenses, I think that could be a whole nother class, you know, on general ledger and doing income statements, right? Because that's a whole nother beast. It is directly related to your direct job costs. But again, make sure that when you're looking at these costs and you're doing your estimate, that you are picking up the indirects, these inconsequentials, because these items, when you get down to the bottom of the financial statement, they will put a hurting on your job profitability if they're not already absorbed into the actual cost. Let's move on here. Okay, and this is where we get a little bit more detailed here, guys, that we're going to go into this, the number 3 report. Okay, again, very high level. We're going to get to the detail in a second. But this right here, this report, we were looking at all the estimate, right? The estimates with the change orders and making sure that the change orders we're getting from the guys in the field or getting from our project managers include a contract amount and an estimated cost amount. Here on this percent completed cost versus percent complete on income, we now have actual cost and we've got actual billings. Okay, so this is a nice report to track as the project goes along. It's not an over-under billing report, but just shows you simply that we can compute now a percentage of completion based on cost and a percentage of completion based on income. All right, again, very high level. We're going to be looking at one that tracks it by cost class, by labor, by materials, right? A lot of times when we look at this, I might be feeling real good about this, that I've billed 46% of this project, or excuse me, that I've got 46% of cost on this project. I've only billed 14%. All right, so this is a nice report, just a little tattletale for your project managers to look out there and say, hey guys, by the way, for the estimate versus the actual cost, here's your percentage of completion on these projects. Right here is the percentage of completion based on our billings. All right, we've got some good stuff happening, we've got some bad stuff happening. Overall, I'm a little bit underbilled in the sense that I'm 27% complete on my estimated costs. I'm 23% complete on my billings for those contracts. This job right here that says I'm 46% complete on my estimated costs, I've only billed 14% on that. All right, guess what job is sucking money out of the company? Right, there's a little cash flow problem there in the sense that that job right there is, we're putting a whole bunch of stuff out there. Now maybe we haven't earned the right to bill, maybe we're working on a state project and we will get paid, that we bill when we get paid because they tell us what we're getting paid. But for the most part, this report, again, a nice tattletale. This job right here, I'm 20% into it, and this project manager has told me to bill half of the contract amount already. Overzealous? Great. Cash-wise? Great. You want to make some collection calls? That's the way to do it. All right. Now, it also might be a situation where we're doing it that well. We're performing this job that well. Okay? That, wow, we estimated this one way high. We got into, we estimated there were going to be a lot more problems than we actually got into. And we are okay with billing this amount there. Last job's the perfect situation, which will never happen, ever, in the history.
You're actually not doing too bad there, right? Because your actual costs are $200,000. You've billed for $230,000. The difference is that your cost percentage is based on your estimated cost, and your billing percentage is based on your estimated income.
Yep.
Which your income's quite a bit higher than your cost.
Yep. Overall, you're still in the plus category, right? What I don't want to see is next month this thing hit 78%, right? On my percentage completion based on costs, and I'm still only 20% billed. I also don't want to see this job go to 90% next month and have my percentage completion based on costs at 30%. Because those POs didn't come in, right? That's where we talk about purchase orders and committed costs and remaining committed costs. The importance of those items, that you don't want that surprise of writing a purchase order and getting down to the end of the project and forgetting that there's 10 invoices from subcontractors coming in, there's 15 invoices from all these purchase orders coming in, right? Purchase orders not so much. I mean, materials, they bill you pretty readily, right? Especially if you got a PO out there. They deliver the goods and you get billed. Subcontractors, on the other hand, they're like all of us. You know, the billing might come in once a week, once a month, once a quarter. But you want to make sure that with the purchase orders and outstanding committed costs that you've got out there, that these are being tracked as well. Because those costs right there, I might not have those 15 invoices from my subcontractors in. And that's why this percentage of completion is so low. I may have earned the right to bill that much, and my project manager knows that. So when I show him this report, he's going to say, oh yeah, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so is going to give me these invoices for $40,000, and that's going to bring that percentage of completion on costs up to 38%. There's a little confusion on over-under billings, at least on the financial level, in the sense that a owner of a company is probably going to, if he's not in the know, he's going to look at an overbilling and say, sweet, right? You know, bill, 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 bill. How come we haven't billed this yet? How come we haven't billed this yet, right? Well, overbillings, when posted as a part of the financial world, the overbilling is actually a liability. An underbilling is an asset, okay? And we'll get to that at the last thing that we talk about here. But just keep that in mind, that when the boss man's got the gear, you know, the hammer down to say, let's bill, let's bill, let's bill, it's not always a good thing to get as many invoices out as you can. Because now you've got that liability of having to perform the work after you may have already received the cash for it. Financial institutions, bonding companies, banks certainly don't want to see that. Okay, guys, I want to illustrate something real quick. The question came up about this, like the allocated or the indirect expenses. This is a real quick report, and it's just an example in my system with the, I've got $1.4 million worth of direct labor expenses, right? And this is just my shop expenses here, okay? But this could be any and all of my indirect expenses that I want to allocate to the jobs. Very simply, I've got $251,000 in my shop labor, shop FICA, FUTA, SUTA, workers' comp, shop supplies, tools, equipment expenses, labor, right? All this can go in here. Very simple equation here that takes that $251,000, divides it by my total labor costs, and this 17.9% is that amount that I'm going to tag to every labor dollar. Every labor dollar that I cost in my job costing is going to go in and cost 17.9%. Foundation will let you go in there and actually expense it, and what it'll do on the financial statements is I've got a line up here, or a line item in my direct expenses that says indirect expenses allocated to jobs, and then I've got an offset down here that actually credits on the financial statements. So the percentage that we were talking about, that if it's wrong, it's wrong, that's going to show me right here, because I might have $240,000 expensed up into the job cost, and I'd be able to see here that there's a difference of $10,000, so I'm underallocated. If I put 22% on these jobs, I would then be overallocated, right? And I'm seeing that I'm taking too much up to the jobs. I'm over-expensing the jobs for the overhead. Same thing we talked about, the equipment and the profitability, right? All right, so just an example here. Now, this is when the cat fights begin. Cost codes, cost codes, cost codes. And I, just in that few seconds that we were chatting along here, everybody said it. Reliable information from the field. Your cost code structure is based on one thing and one thing only. Reliable information from the field. You can have 10 cost codes, you can have 1,000 cost codes. If you're working for the state, you have the potential of having multi-thousands of cost codes, right? Because your cost codes are probably designated by the line items that they've got in the ODOT book, which they'll change on a whim. So don't commit any of them to memory. All right. On the other hand, when we look on cost code structure, the question is what can be tracked and what can be tracked reliably? Does the guy know, for the, I got a couple examples here, a drywall contractor, can the guy who's hanging the sheetrock, can you tell if he's putting up a 4x8 sheet or a 4x12 sheet? hopefully, right? There's a big difference in weight in getting them around corners and putting them up and looking at the stack. It's either 12 foot long or it's 8 foot long. We talked about it right there. There's a culture. There's a culture that you need for these guys to buy into for them to give you this information back. If they don't see any benefit to it, and they don't care whether they were pouring concrete, doing a slab on grade, doing flat, doing curbs, doing sidewalks, if they don't care, these reports are pretty much useless on a cost code level. If you're not familiar what cost code structure is, guys, it can be very specific to your business, okay? I've included a copy of the Construction Specifications Institute, the CSI codes. These are the old codes. They now have how many divisions? Does anybody know right offhand? Like 52, 58? Yeah, there's a whole bunch more than you see here, right? This is the old breakdown. Works really well for a general contractor. But you can see that if you are in one of these particular trades, if you're into metalworking or you're into concrete, it's a good structure at least for a start, okay? How many cost codes do you guys run in your business?
What do you think, Joe?
Too many. That's what I think.
Too many?
Too
I
many.
mean, it's based on a DOT.
I would say our, yeah, I mean, our profit, where our company profits, we should not use more than 30. That's what I would say, you know, with the work that we perform
Yep,
ourselves.
yep.
When you
Yes.
go above 50, now you're getting crazy.
It's a crapshoot on what you're going to get, right?
Exactly what you're
Yep.
getting back.
Yep.
That's where we fail a little bit in the codes.
In the notes that I wrote before, it's one of those things where you can start small. You can start with one cost code. And then as you're working towards this structure that you want to develop, you say, let's now break this down because I need to track this. I need to know if hauling is something beneficial for us to do or if it's beneficial for someone else to do. Okay, so I'm going to break this cost code out for hauling and say I'm going to put my subcontractor costs there. I'm also going to put my direct labor costs there. I'm then going to look at these, and I'm going to do nothing but subcontracting costs on this job. I'm going to do nothing but direct, self-performant on this job. Then I can actually compare those two cost codes and look at the dollars that are going into them. Of course, we got to track some kind of quantity, right, to find out whether or not we're profitable. It's easy to expand. It's easy to contract, right? Problem is when you come in, and a lot of times when we go and install software, somebody's never done it before, and there's one guy who is project manager from XYZ company that was a $200 million contractor, and he's coming into this $8 million contractor, and he wants to institute this cost code structure on this $8 million business, right? And they go, he's going to get nothing. And he gets frustrated, and the owner gets frustrated because all the job cost reports. What he's doing is really good if you've got the people and the mindset in place to track it. There is no problem with setting up a cost code structure and tracking it on a single job. Keep that in mind, that you don't have to go full, you don't have to go whole hog in the cost coding structure. It might take a year to develop. It might take 2 years. I will tell you that a lot of the cost code systems and structures that people have taken a lot of time to develop, right? So again, the CSI codes that are shown here, bare minimum, nice breakdown to start with, some good descriptions, and then you can see how these can be then subdivided into additional codes. That's why these as the old divisions, the new ones 52, 58, whatever the number is, I know it's more than 50. They've gotten into more detail and more breakdown with the CSI codes, all right? Those are available out on the web, okay? So again, the breakdown with your cost coding structure, that's one of those things where you can sit and talk about it all day, literally all day. Whatever works for you, start small, start with 2 cost codes, see if they can get regular versus overtime. They'll get that one because obviously the pay difference, right? Yeah, that's no problem. So here's one with foundation, framing, roofing, rough exterior, finish interior, right? Just an example. But each one of these has those components that we talked about way back when we were talking about the estimate, right? Our labor dollars, our material dollars, our rented equipment. So when I post my material expense and it comes in through an AP invoice, if I've got it on a purchase order, this is probably already designated to what cost code and job it's going to go to. Labor is coming from time cards. Lots of advancements in the field recently with electronic time card systems and electronic entry. Oh my God, I mean 10 years ago, the construction industry was technologically deficient. I mean, we were dumb. You know, the accounting software was the most advanced thing they had in their office. Now with your GPS and HCSS, you know, we mentioned that all your guys in the field have laptops, right? All the superintendents or project managers, they all have laptops. Everybody's got a cell phone, right? There's a blue million applications that'll track time on your cell phones. And all these applications have the ability to put a job number in, a cost code number. The employee number is defaulted to the app that's on the phone. So they literally click clock in, clock out. And we were talking about the geofencing, which is awesome, that if they clock in and they're at home, you can get an email sent to you that says, Scott just clocked in, but in fact he's in bed. So they're out there. There's so many of them that the price is extremely competitive.
Do you have anybody you work with?
We work with everybody. I mean, anybody who does it. Job clock. Because we can take a CSV file, which they all produce a CSV file and import it. Yeah. So there's another benefit of that too, guys. That the time card entry is 0. Are you guys who are using a heavy job? Are you importing time cards into your system?
Yeah.
So they do all their field guys do all the entry on their laptops, and then they update to your probably heavy job manager, right? Then they extract the time cards out, and you can. I've seen payroll for 350 people done in 10 minutes. It's insane.
If it's correct. When it's
Yeah, the great thing about reviewing it and everything is that it is not a problem for the entry clerk anymore. It is a problem for the person in the field. It's the person closest to it. The foreman, and I bet you guys will agree with me, I mean, the foremen get it, that they don't want to hear the guys complaining to them, right? So they will adjust and they will make, it takes a while. I've seen the electronic time card systems take about a year to implement and really get working. But when they do, it's flawless. And it's new to those guys, right? They're there to drive a truck. They're there to drive an excavator. They're there to go hang something on the wall. They're not there to play on computers all day. I was in Atlanta last 2 days. It took me 5 seconds to think of where I was yesterday, right? You know, I don't remember what I did yesterday. I'm going to wait until the end of the week and tell you by project, by cost code what I did all week. Ain't going to happen. So daily time cards on these big projects, I think, are one of those things. And you guys see that in HCSS, that they are quite literally probably at the end of the day going back to the hotel or going back to their laptop, and they're putting the time in. So, yeah, again, a culture change, right? All these things, these guys are not used to it because they've never done it. I always find that you would think that it's a harder sell to give these to the union guys. The truth is the union guys seem to be a whole lot more accepting to it because I think they get it. They get it. They're in that mode. They're a lot of union contractors that I go to, they say, oh, we can't tell the guys to do that. You know, it's not part of their thing. And I say, well, it's part of what your company does, so have them do it. And there's not as much resistance for a full union contractor as it is for the other guys who have kind of, you know, it's family business, small contractor, everybody's, you know, and now all of a sudden I'm being told what to do? Wait a minute. You mean you're going to charge me for those gloves? You're going to charge me for that stuff I'm taking out of the warehouse? Yeah, well. Okay, and we talked about it as well, that when it becomes an issue of profitability, not only of the job, but profitability and sustainability of the company, and people buy into the fact that, guys, the company's losing money. And the company's losing money because the jobs aren't making money, right? So we can't exist by just giving these jobs away, and we'll fund the jobs that are losing money. The reason the jobs are there are to make the company money and ultimately make everybody money and stay around and not go out of business. All right, let's flash forward real quick here, guys, to the report number 6. It says percent complete with cost, quantity, and hours. This report, again, when you're coming up with your cost code structure, we were talking about the doors, right? We're not so interested in how many fasteners we are using, right? But we are interested in how many of those $2,000 steel doors we're putting in, right? If the type of door or type of installation becomes the cost code, and we can track a quantity on it. Quantity reporting is huge. Quantity reporting is the pinnacle of job cost reporting in my mind. Quantity reporting allows you to go in and say, not only did it cost me this much, did it take me this many hours to do it, but this is how many I did, all right? I can look at someone's system that did quantity reporting and be an estimator tomorrow, and I will make money on every job, right? Because there is a estimated cost per quantity for installation. I'll get to you in 1 second here. So I've got this cost code structure here of 4-inch pavers. There's a unit of measure. They're 8-inch sewer line, roofing installed shingles, exterior stucco. Unit of measure, my estimated quantity. So my quantity relates to my unit of measure. I've got estimated labor hours. And then you'll see there's a percentage of completion that I can calculate based on the estimate versus actual, not only on labor hours, but on the quantities installed and the cost incurred. Huge. I now know what it costs and how many hours it takes to put in 50 of those doors, right, by cost code. So that's the determining factor, right? That one item that you're looking at tracking. The heavy highway guys have got it easy because their breakdown is based on their billing and their line items that are on the billing. There's another one for you if you're billing by AIA. A lot of people will have a cost code structure that is the same as the billing items on the AIA. That might mean that every job has a different cost code structure, but if you've got a project manager or someone close to the job that's out there, they're looking at what items are going to be billed that period, and they can cost code those appropriately. Not a great idea for a 200-line AIA, certainly a great idea for a 20-line AIA. I just want to touch on the over-under billing because ultimately all the job costing, whether we go, you know, we start out with the estimate, and the estimators, they estimate every single one of those fasteners, right? They're getting the finite detail. What you want to do is hopefully compress that job costing into a manageable amount of codes or items that you're tracking in the field, right? And then we get down to the ultimate or the final portion of this, which is on the financial statements and the over-under billings. And you'll remember when we talk about this revised estimated cost, right? This right here, change orders, change orders, change orders, change orders. Change orders need to be put in the system. Change orders need to be tracked. Change orders need to be put in the system, and they need to be tracked when they happen, okay? Not when we get to this point and we're creating an over-under billing report for the second quarter. And, oh yeah, by the way, I had this $100,000 change order I forgot to give you, and it's from February. Not a great time to get that, all right? So change orders, as you're getting change orders in the system, make sure that you've got the contract amount and the estimated cost. Rule of thumb, for the people that say we can't give you the estimated costs on those change orders, I don't care if you break it down by cost code. Let's talk about profitability. At least let me know what you're going to make on this change order. So if it's 5%, 10%, if you want to use the original estimated gross profit on the job, we'll stick with that. The bottom line is that we've got to get some kind of estimated cost in here because the over-under billing report is defined or determined by the percentage of completion, okay? Percentage of completion based on cost. So I take my cost to date and I divide it by my revised estimated cost. That gives me my percentage of completion. A lot of different ways to get to this next number, which is the earned revenue, okay? I like the KISS method where you just take a percentage of completion and you multiply it by your revised contract amount. If I have completed 46% of this project, I have earned the right to bill 46% of my contract amount. That is this earned revenue, okay? Billings to date, how much I've billed, and then I am either overbilled or underbilled based on that earned amount. Does that make sense? Don't think that those accounting people are so smart. Over-under billings are not that difficult. People make them difficult because they want to make them look like what they think they should look like, as opposed to letting them look like what they are. Right? Although this number, the percentage of completion, this is a number that a lot of people will play with. Again, very simple over-under billing report. A lot of people will look at this and they will do the forecasted hours at completion, or forecasted dollars at completion. So if you've got a project manager that can actually look at this and say, I've got my cost to date here of $103,000, my revised estimated cost of $123,000. If the project manager is good, he's going to tell you I got $100,000 left in this project. He can tell you that. If that's the case, then that cost to complete is actually, or the percentage of completion is actually increased. That would be one of those change orders that you put in with a negative $20,000 on the estimated cost because you're buying down that project, right? Then your percentage of completion goes up, your earned revenue goes up, and your right to bill more on that project goes up as well, as does the profitability on the job. Okay?